Something I have experienced in my own life and that I've now seen in coaching with other people is that we often have this limiting belief that we can't do something because the thing seems unimaginable. So much work and so much pain and sacrifice that we just immediately shut down and say, no, I can't. And the two of you have flipped that script recently, and you were experiencing pain and you found an I can. It wasn't an easy I can. It took so much, but you did it. And so we're going to be sharing today the impact of that I can, what has been happening in your lives recently, and more of that story to inspire others that there is an answer. Things are figure outable. Yeah. We just have to kind of get curious about it. Welcome to the Connection Codes podcast. This is the podcast where we break open the emotions that take us from being disconnected to connected in our relationships and in ourselves. I am your host, Tera Wages, and joining me is marriage and family therapist, clinical sexologist, Dr. Glenn Hill, and his incredible wife, Phyllis. And together, they have founded the Connection Codes, which is the guide to human connection. And we're so glad you're here.
Yes. Hello, world.
Hi, friends. So if you're listening week by week to our podcasts, I know that we've dropped a lot of hints for quite a while of the big changes that we are in the process of going through. We just haven't shared the whole story. I love what you said to me before we started this podcast. Like, do you remember that conversation we had? And I know that I would just love for you to start there, Tera, with sharing that conversation, because I don't remember that one. I just remember, over the past whatever year, if you said to me a year ago, would you make this major change in your life? The answer was always no. And for all the reasons, right? So I wasn't tuning in to my body. And that's what we really want to talk about is, wow, when you start this journey, it can bring about major changes in your life. And change is hard. There's some people who will just boldly say it. I don't like change, or I don't want change. And yet the seasons of life bring about change. Like it just happens. Right. And we can't slow it down or stop it. Why don't we start there? Talk about that conversation we had. We think it was probably February.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to me to think about.
Well, I am one of the luckiest people that lives, and I get to live life very closely with you. And so I have been watching over the last year or more the pain that you're in and just how much I'm just going to say specifically for Phyllis, that you have carried in both the Connection Codes, which you both do, and then you also help Glenn in his private practice, but you also are managing a full household where Glenn's mom has been living with you for the last 10. Is that right?
11
and a half years. And you're her full-time caregiver. And you had reached a point where you were experiencing high levels of pain regularly. So around February, I looked at you. I was like, hey, Grandma has been saying she wants to move to South Carolina to be with Glenn's sister. And the sister has vocalized that she would love for Grandma to come and live there. Why don't you just make that happen? Like, can we get Grandma to South Carolina? And your instinct, which I so relate to, it was an immediate no. It's like your body even reacted, I remember. And you're like, no, that I can't do that. The thought of packing her, of getting everything and organized to do that, that's impossible for me right now. And now to look and see what has transpired the months after that, it makes me think about how so often we hear something or a new idea is presented and our body reacts to it. And it's like, nope, I can't do that. And so sometimes it takes processing a bit more, and things changing where we can actually see the answer. So now I want you to take over and share what happened after that.
Well, and actually you just... And now I'm being reminded of some things that happened January, February of this year. And what's interesting, and maybe this is where you as a listener could really relate, is that we may be in a pot of water and then it begins to boil and the pain increases, but increases slowly. And so we don't experience it. We don't see it.
Wow.
We get used to the pain and we think we can take on more pain. And sometimes it takes the outsider to have a voice. And we went on a trip with our oldest daughter, Echo, to the beach. And it was end of January, beginning of February. To get out of the cold, sunshine, let's go to the beach. So we bring grandmother with us, stay in a condo on the beach. And Echo observed me for the 9 or 10 days that we were there. And at some point she said, Mom, you need help.
Yeah.
And I thought, no, I don't. I can do it all. I can manage grandmother and all the care she needs. And for you, if you're a new listener, she's almost 97. She'll be 97 on January 2nd. And she has been incredibly independent until a year ago, where so many things started happening and she stopped driving. And also just at her age, she needs a lot of help. But it's that slow pain, right? For me, but when someone else saw it, Echo seeing it saying, you need help. And my first response was, I don't know how to get that help. So I'll just keep doing it. Echo does not let things go. So she was not okay with that answer. She said, that's not true. There is help to be had and money is there to pay for it. Echo makes it super practical for me because she was like, Mom, every session that you're in with Dad in his private practice, take all that money and put it towards help. So she made it like, oh. But then my next thing was, I don't know how to find help. I don't know how to find help. But I mean, she opened a door that told me you shouldn't be doing all this.
Yeah.
And so then I came home from the beach and we had a family living with us at the time, Jordan and Erica Coop. They've been on our podcast multiple times. And
they're certified connection coaches.
Yes, they are certified coaches from Canada and they have 4 children. They were living with us here in Tennessee. So I came home and I just shared my conversation with Echo and they immediately said, hey, as long as we're here, we will do everything. We will drive her because a very active woman wants to go to the Y 4 days a week and all the other things, and then just needs care with getting her food and getting her checked on. And so they're like, we'll do it all while we're here. That was amazing because that was such an easy, I voiced it, they took it, they did it beautifully, and I checked out. Like that whole time they lived with us, which was for several months, I did not step back into that arena at all. But then the minute they left, it got thrown back at me. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Now I don't know that I can pick it back up. It's a lot. But again, you do what's right before you. So of course I go back into that. And then I realized, okay, I really do need help. We started making arrangements for that to happen. Like we had help all summer. But let's fast forward to, it was May, and we were embarking on a 1-month-long voyage where we were going to all these different places. I thought, you know what, before we go, we should open the pool for the summer so that our neighbors, and then we had a guest cottage on our property, and so the people in there could enjoy it, and the kids, if they come by, they can enjoy it. Now, if you own a pool, you know it's a lot of work. So I begin the process on Mother's Day to get this thing open before we leave at 6 a.m. Tuesday morning. And our pool is only 4 years old. It's a ginormous above ground 33-foot pool. Well, it begins to fold into each other, into itself, like it implodes. That's how I say it. It folds. Yeah. It's not supposed to fold. It's like, what is happening to our pool? It started to come apart. It's 4 years old. And it had this ginormous deck around it. And
we should have a time-lapse video of it because, metal walls, every time it would start to crinkle in, it would sound like a cannon went off.
Yeah. You could hear it in the house with the doors closed.
Yep.
Yeah. And so Glenn is busy with the private practice and then closing up a month-long trip. Like he's just focused not on the house or what has to be done to get the house ready. And for that month, we did send Glenn's mom to your oldest sister's house for the month while we were gone. So that was part of getting her to the airport and getting her off before we left. But that pool situation was just crazy because it was so painful in the moment. Like, you've got to be kidding me. And I don't have any more energy to do anything about it. Like, I don't know how to fix the pool. Couldn't find anyone to come and help as far as company wise to come and fix it. And, Glenn, he'd run up between sessions and he'd be like, oh, it's worse. And he couldn't do anything.
So can I share that part? Because
Yes.
I'm thinking once the water gets in, it's going to push it back out and we'll live happily ever after. And every time I'd run, because Mondays are always my busiest back-to-back days. And so I'd run up, have 3, 4, 5 minutes between sessions thinking, it's finally started settling back in. And it would be worse. And then I'd be up there and there'd be another explosion from it folding in some more on itself. So at one point I run upstairs and each time I'd come up, I'd be like, okay, babe, what's happening for you?
So then Glenn is checking on me and I'm having to go outside, coming back and forth to check on this pool. And it's just like, I can't believe it. I just can't believe it. And again, I can't find
There's
anyone.
nothing we can do about it.
No.
So it's not like,
I did talk to one pool company and they said, yeah, there's no hope. Like, it's not fixable. I'm not sure that that's true now.
You processed on the podcast multiple times anger around the pool.
Okay,
so for our listeners,
that is true.
This
you
is
know
how
the
things are
pool
playing
story.
out. Yes.
Okay, good. You know the pool story. But all of a sudden, I realized that I am feeling tremendous amount of joy. One of the times that Glenn runs upstairs and he's just saying, we'll buy another one. We'll buy another one. And I said, I don't want to buy another one. I don't want to own a pool. I feel so much joy.
So when I come up and I go, babe, what's happening? She says, joy. I'm like, yeah, I get the sad. Wait, what? Joy? I didn't see that coming. What's happening with the joy?
I was flooded with joy at the idea I don't have to take care of a pool this summer. I don't have to clean it. I don't have to find the chemicals and make sure they're always bought and everything is there. And I'm like, I don't want another pool. I just want all of that to go away. And then we leave. So we get up at the crack of dawn to get to the airport and leave. And we fly to Los Angeles and then we fly to Cabo, but we have a stopover somewhere. So we go to Cabo and are staying in an all-inclusive resort.
Our first ever.
And Glenn, as he normally does, keeps his sessions going. So I then have just a lot of time to read, sit by the pool and read. It was during that moment that I realized I don't want that life anymore. I want this life, which it's like a night and day experience to be somewhere where I could breathe very deeply, where I could sit. The life that we have had in Franklin has been a beautiful life and a beautiful property. Many people have come through, have stayed at our home, and we have room for many, many people. But I don't want that anymore. And I don't want to care for his mom anymore. It almost felt blasphemous to say that out loud. But when I said it, I felt like God's presence in that moment, just like he gave me the biggest hug. I felt it. And he said, you've done well. You've done enough.
Yeah.
And it's good to say that you're done. Like, it's such a moment of, oh my word, I felt him. I felt his hug. And so when Glenn joined me, I did feel a little bit of fear just in that first moment of saying, I don't want to do that anymore. And I think even when I said it, I'm not sure you knew what I was talking about. You know,
she goes, I'm done. And I'm assuming she's talking about our marriage.
Right.
I've been this for 40,
yes.
40 years.
Like, I don't want that life anymore.
Well, I knew it was coming.
She spent 3 hours by the pool. It's over.
I've been anticipating this for 40 years. I knew eventually you'd leave.
Well, and even the way I worded it, like, I don't want that life anymore.
No.
You're like, am I in it? Am I still am I in your picture?
No.
But as soon as I said it, that's what was incredible to me. And we've had several moments in our life where we've made major changes. And I have memories where I say it first and then you're like, I'm there. And I just was so shocked by that, because that day when Glenn, his first response was, then let's sell everything. Let's do this. I was just like, oh my word, he hears me. He's a yes. He's not a, ooh, babe, I don't know about this. That sounds extreme. But he didn't. Glenn was so supportive. And then, I would say for months, you processed fear about your mom. I would say that was your biggest thing that you had to process, and sad about that, because prior to having her come and move in with us, we never dreamed we would be the ones taking care of her in her older years. We thought one of the daughters would. But once she was with us, we always said she would be with us and we would never make a change until she passed. And that's probably why, Tera, with our conversation, I was like, oh, no, we won't make a change. And even this time last year, if someone had said anything about it, I would have said, no, we won't do anything until she passes. So to have such a moment in May where I really felt such peace, I never wavered. That peace that I was given that day never left me. And we began to get giddy. And I think it helped that we were gone for a month and we did some amazing trips during that month. Every experience to me was like, this is the life we could live. Like, to not have the responsibility of that property and your mom. But the property was huge. If you don't know what we all had out there, you would not know how big that was.
Yeah, I was about to say that because we have about 11 acres, 2 houses, one very, very large house, apartments in those houses, just so much responsibility. Well, somewhere, it's not that we have it on a calendar, but 2-3 years ago, basically I abandoned the property. I'm always focused on connection code stuff. And so every day I'd wake up and it's like, well, I can go trim a tree, fix a light, do this, or I can do this connection codes thing that I've been behind on for 9 weeks. So then all of it ends up dumped on Phyllis. And so, 97% of everything with the property, even if she's not doing the thing, she has to go find the person that's semi-competent to hire to do the thing and then follow up and see if they did the thing, they did it correctly. So it just became so much pressure on her, just this constant. Waking up in the morning, wake up in the middle of the night with all this pressure. And simultaneously, our property was no longer the family hub. All of our children bought property. And so they were always vying for Christmas, Thanksgiving, Memorial Day, whatever, cookouts, of course, birthday parties. And so we realized when we were in Cabo that we had not had a family event. We had many community events. Our property was available for weddings and retirement parties and fundraisers and stuff, which we were delighted to do that. It's like, wait a minute, this isn't the family hub anymore. We had not had a family event in 2.5 years on our property. So we're like, wait, this isn't even serving the reason that we bought the property anymore. It's no longer doing that.
I want to point out the property, it wasn't just like you had a house.
Right.
You hosted people regularly. You had connection codes events. You had weddings. You had people in and out of your home, even when you weren't there on a regular basis. And so to say, I don't want the property anymore, it's multi-layered. It's also like an identity piece as well. Very much of like what you did on a regular basis.
Yeah, and we were not hospitable. We were, I don't know what hospitality on cocaine is. That's what we were. Literally, there are people, and you've been at our house, so many people at our house, and they're like, what are these revolving doors? Where are all these people that are just randomly, and that was every day. There were people, my mother, when she first moved in with us, was like, I think I saw 3 strangers in our house that I've never seen before. And, we very much love people and being hospitable, but we were pretty nth degree.
It goes back to that idea of you're in a pot of water and it starts to boil. Yeah. And the pain, I think, had been increasing over the last 2 years, but I didn't realize it.
Yeah.
And I felt very abandoned out there, very lonely, very, very lonely, which I think many, if you go back and listen to podcasts and me doing the wheel, so often it was lonely that had to do with the projects, the endless tasks and projects. And so the pain increased, but I never stopped long enough to go, this has become an unmanageable pain point. What are my options? I didn't think I had options, didn't think it's that whole setup. We set it up and said it over and over and over. we will keep this until she passes, and then we'll think about what we want to do next. And to me, that decision, it was like, this is such a strong, I can't do this anymore. I have to find kind of a way out.
Yeah. And a whole bunch of ingredients merged together simultaneously. We've just traveled more and more, and we were traveling over 50% of the time. So we're not even at the property the majority of the time. And of course, now that comes into play with mom. It's like, we're not even going to be there for her anyway, because we travel so much. So, just big question marks about what to do next.
Yeah.
So what's fascinating about the story, so go back to us sitting and talking about it in Cabo. And then we're like, okay, we want to tell the kids, but we wanted to do it like we wouldn't be home for a month. So it's like, well, not in person, but we could do it individually instead of sending a group text. I really want to talk to each of them, which that took a minute. I don't remember at what point they all we had those phone calls. But I remember telling Echo, and she just simply said, Mom, let the root grow before you really start telling people. Just let it grow. Let the root grow. And it could take a while, Mom. Let the idea grow and take root. And I thought, okay, that's good advice. And let's just see what happens with that. And so then I remember having a conversation with you because the conversation grew. I said, I don't want to buy another property. I don't want to live in another house. I don't want to be responsible for anything. So that means, what does that mean, right? That means we have to get rid of everything. Everything. And then I said to Glenn, I said, okay, let's go through the house in our let's just close our eyes and picture, and let's start upstairs and go through every room. And you tell me what in that room you would want to keep.
And this was still on our month-long sojourn.
Yeah.
Where we're talking.
So then I think I said, do you want to go first? And I think you were like, oh, I need a minute. I said, oh, I don't need a minute. I'm already upstairs in my mind, and I'm going through each room. And upstairs, I said, well, we have a lot of beautiful canvases of our grandchildren and, our children. I want to keep the canvases, the pictures. And then I worked my way downstairs. I realized, wow, there's one little side table that I brought home from my mom's after she died that I don't want to let go of. But then just the realization that, wow, this house, I'm not attached to anything in this house. And I don't know if it was 24 hours or 48 hours, just of grieving, like, wow, this house doesn't represent me. I don't feel at all tied to this house. It's just that realization that I somehow got lost. And I don't know at what point I got lost in this house. And so many things we did, like projects we did, was for the sake of others. And it's very fascinating. I shared some of these things with Echo, just the going through the house and what that did, and just realizing, wow, I'm not attached. There's not things in this house that are going to be sad to say goodbye to. So I'm sharing this with Echo, and she tells me that the last project that we did this year was for Glenn to have a writer's nook, which was part of the old laundry room. So I went from a laundry room to a laundry spot. After that project was done, Haven, who's 11, granddaughter, Echo's daughter, came home and said, Mom, when is Honey going to do something on their house or on their property that she really loves and she really wants? When Echo shared that with me, I just cried because I thought, yeah, like what happened where so many parts of this property, they don't represent my dream, or I guess dream is the best word. And, Glenn and I have had many conversations about this because he's the dreamer, and somewhere back whenever I took it on as it's my job to make sure all of his dreams come true. But then I'm exhausted and I don't have any space to dream myself and don't even want to. Like, I'm like, oh, no, I'm so busy with his dreams. I don't have capacity for my own dreams. I think there's just been some huge realizations of the things that I've said yes to. And, often others will comment.
Yeah.
Just like the fact that I've taken care of my mother-in-law for 11 and a half years, not her daughters. It's not like Glenn's an only son or only child.
Right.
He has those siblings. And yet the daughter-in-law, people always say, well, you're the daughter-in-law. But it never occurred to me that there's room for any other choice.
Yeah.
It's like, that's just my responsibility.
Yeah. Well, I kind of want to even like pause the story part of it a little bit right here, because right now we've gone through like you reaching that decision. So I think just kind of separating these pieces out of like what led you to that moment of the decision, what you were feeling before that decision was made, and then walking through that process. And then let's talk about the actual act of it, what it took for you to get there, and then where you are now. But I want to separate them because I know that there are a lot of listeners that they are in a pot of water that is slowly coming to a boil.
And that's the problem, is it's slowly.
Yes. And that analogy, as soon as you said that, I was like, oh, yes. And it's taken you decades of being in pain to even realize that you're in pain.
Wow.
And I think so many of us live life that way. Even just this week, it's something that I've been working with my coaching clients on, of like, where's your pain? How can we eliminate your pain? And I have been sitting at my desk. I have a window there and there's a box right there. And I've been sitting crooked for hours on calls every day and in pain on all of these calls. 2 days ago, it hit me. I can just flip this part of the desk to this side, and then I can sit properly. It took Wes, I said the need. It took him 5 minutes to switch it around, and now I can sit it. And you don't realize you're in pain because you get so used to it. And so I would love for you to do an issue-specific wheel, which is the wheel is the 4-minute tool that Dr. Glenn and Phyllis created to help you access those emotions. So when Phyllis finally could touch that pain, she could know, oh, this is the message. Oh, there's joy here. What is this joy trying to tell me? And then move her into action. So do an issue-specific wheel about making this decision.
Ooh. Okay, so issue-specific wheel about making the decision. So that means go back to May. Okay, I think the first one is anger. Anger that I allowed myself to get lost.
Wow.
It was never asked. Glenn never asked me to make all his dreams come true. Wow. He never asked. I just took that on as my responsibility. And I feel anger that I did that and got lost myself in that. So I feel anger in that.
Yeah.
Probably some guilt that it took me so long to acknowledge I don't want to do this anymore. And that follows shame really closely. A lot of shame of I should. It's the should world. It's the I should have been able to do it all. I should have been able to manage that whole life plus everything else. So definitely shame in that. In that moment in May, my fear was that this is a mountain of a task, an impossible task. Fear that it's not doable. Too many moving parts. So a lot of fear about the logistical side of it. Probably a lot of lonely in that because I am the tasker. And Glenn really did tell me right away. He said, like, his yes was really strong, but he goes, I don't know how to support you in that because we're doing a coaching cohort. We're connection codes is just all consuming and his private practice is all consuming. So he made it really clear, not in any way a mean way, but just a reality. And I said, I hear you. But this, I still have to do this. So lonely, it was definitely lonely. There were moments of sad in the acknowledgement of what the need was. And there was sad lurking, right? The hurt, I would say the hurt, I know we're going back to just making the decision. So that's hard. Just as far as in the moment, I think there were moments of hurt in just realizing in many conversations Glenn and I had, he even said it on the podcast that he had abandoned me because connection codes became all consuming and his private practice. And so there was just hurt in that. But yes, a reality, but a hurt. And then joy, just tremendous joy in making the decision. Like, it just flooded me with such peace and joy of this is right. This is right. And it's time, and all the other stuff's going to work out. Like, I have the peace that all the parts are going to work. They're going to all go according to plan, and it's going to go. And the joy of being the future, like the joy of the potential of the future, was so huge in May and was so strong. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And one of the takeaways that I want our listeners to really hear, there are two things that are coming to my mind. One is to really tune into your pain. When you're getting that message of pain, it may feel like low levels, but like, what is that telling you? And because we do, when we are functioning, we have a podcast episode about this. When you're functioning from pain, everything is painful.
Yeah.
Everything feels painful. And so I think that what we had witnessed with you was that, like, you were living in such deep pain that everything had become pain. And I also want our listeners to hear, because this is something I've struggled with recently in doing this work. I have felt like I can't have pain. Like, I have to be the example of living without pain.
Wow.
When that's actually not my purpose and your purpose. My role is to say, I do have pain. And this is what I'm doing.
Wow.
This is how I am showing up in that pain. And for you to really tune into that. And then two, something that is standing out to me as well is we could not tell you what to do. You know, I am sitting here saying, like, why doesn't grandma move? Like, for me, I'm like, why can't we just make this happen? Like, I'll snap. And an Echo, which she does a much more graceful job of, like, you need help. Like, we can't tell you what to do. You needed to get there. You needed to process. And people can speak in, but there's a difference in speaking in and demanding, telling, or anything like that. So I think sometimes with our partners, we can see them and we're like, why aren't you doing that? Just do this thing. That's actually not going to get you very far.
Yeah.
So really tuning into that, if you don't already have a core emotional wheel, that is where you can access that pain. You can go back and listen to old episodes and hear Phyllis processing, this water's getting hotter. This water is getting hotter. And that led her to this moment.
And I have to interject the corollary to your first point is, don't wait till the water's boiling. You're in freaking boiling water. This is not good. This is not healthy. And you didn't notice that it was slowly, and we're supposed to tune into ourselves. Babies don't wait till the water's boiling. There's no emotional dams with babies. They convey it when it happens, as it happens, in the moment, authentic, vulnerable, every time. We call it the first time, every time, anytime, all the time. That's what we're supposed to do. That's how we're supposed to live.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think about two examples, marriage, because I love the example of your home, but we do this in our marriage. We have these pains, and then we get to see people when they are boiling. And that is so intense to come back from. And then also, like, our jobs, like, we show up every single day, and like, I followed this girl on Instagram, and she's losing her hair. Her hair is falling out because she ended up leaving her job, but she had so much stress from her job. And so what areas of our life? And so I love that you acknowledged, you saw the pain, and the answer was not easy. And it wasn't even the first choice that you probably would have chosen, but it became very clear. This is the thing that I need. And you didn't say no, you said yes to yourself. So I'm excited to hear the rest of this story of what that yeses looks like, and challenge our listeners for what do you need to say yes to in your life. And so thank you so much for being here, for listening. And we do all of this because
you need this.
You deserve this. So let's do this.
Let's do this.